Hello, everyone. Welcome to our New Zealand interviewing workshop with DEVS and SESA. I'm Jess.
I'm Dave from SESA.
And I'm Julia.
And we're going to be your presenters. So before we start off, we just like to thank our sponsors. So on DEVS side, we have Potentia, Sens, Atlassian, and then Serato, Nintex, Optiver, Zero, Canva, and Gather.
And from SESA, we want to thank our gold sponsors, EcoPortal, IMC, and Jane Street, and our silver sponsors, Atlassian, Canva, Datacom, Lawview, Cigna, Serato, Xylo, Vista, and VivCourt.
So this is a rough interview of what's going to be expected during the rough overview of the workshop. So we're going to be covering these topics. And yeah, hopefully you learn a lot from it. And here's also the mentee, if you have any questions. Well, feel free to raise your hand whenever.
Now over to Dave.
Yep, so before entering the interview, there's one thing you need to do. It's submitting your CV, and even before that, you need to make a CV. For people who don't know how to make a technical CV, and even the people who know it but want some more tips and tricks for making a CV, this is the one for you. So just before we dive in, let's redefine what a CV is. So a CV is something that you use to showcase your skills, and more importantly, it's something that needs to be easy to read and scan quickly. The HRs usually don't take that long, like less than even 30 seconds sometimes to read a CV. And even though some places, they don't use people, they use automated software to analyze CVs. So it's good to make it stand out and include the necessary information in a concise manner. Yeah, so some general CV tips. So it's good to make it one page, especially for people like us wanting internships and grad roles. So one page is good, but there's an exception. If you're going for summer tech, I guess most of you, I think they require 2 pages. It changes time to time, but there's just one exception to take note of. Also, many places prefer PDF. So it's an easy task. So make sure you export it to PDF when you're submitting your CVs. And don't put down your referees. Unlike part-time job CVs, you don't really need references. You can just exclude it. But again, there's one exception, and that's summer tech. And I can talk about this later on. And the usual stuff: don't use bad font, keep it clean, easy to read, and also white space. It's good to include as much information possible in your CV, but white space is also important, making it comfortable for the reader to read your CV. So make sure to keep it concise. And color is okay, but make sure when you print it out in black and white, it's readable. And yeah, make sure it's readable. And finally, ensure the links work on your CV, the links to your GitHub, your LinkedIn, any of your personal websites. Just make sure it works. Now, moving on, 1 column versus 2 columns, the most common type of format when you're making your CV. It's really up to you which format you want to use, but there are a few advantages and disadvantages between the 2 formats. So I'll just cover a few. Firstly, as you can see on the slide, 1 column is easy to read and has a logical flow, and Google likes it. What I mean by this is that it is easier for the ATS to analyze it, and ATS is a applicant tracking software. It's an automated software that reads your CVs. Now, moving on to 2 columns, you can get more information in, and I found that on the web, there are more templates that are in 2 columns. And when you're applying for big companies, they might not like it when it's in 2 columns, when it gets analyzed by the software. It's nothing to be too concerned about. I personally use 2-column CVs as well, but it's something to take a note of. Now, a general CV structure, what to include in a technical CV. You need your name and contact details, of course, and education, experience, and software projects. These are, I guess, the important ones that you want to emphasize. You want to have a few more bullet points compared to other parts, and the ones that you want to put near the top of your CV. And in terms of, for extracurriculars and awards, these are something that you can show your personality, things that you do outside of uni, and this can be a bit more towards the bottom of your CV. Okay, let's cover each element of the CV bit by bit. Firstly, name and contact details. You put down your full name, of course, and your contact number and email so the recruiters can reach out to you when they're interested in you. Just a small tip, when you're making applications to overseas companies, it's good to use the country code, which is that +64 instead of 021, 027, so that they can actually call you. Also, it's good to include links to your important websites, GitHub, LinkedIn, and your personal websites, anything you want to show off so that the recruiters can see your work, your projects, anything else they want to see. And make sure if you're in your penultimate year, make sure you mention it, because you'll see a lot of job descriptions explicitly mention they want penultimate year students. So if you put down that you're in the penultimate year, the recruiters can find it quickly, and your CV screening process can be more faster. If you're not in your penultimate year, but you still want to apply for those positions, you can still apply, but just don't put which year you're in. It doesn't hurt to still apply, so you can still apply for it. Next is education. You put down your degree name, your university name, and the start and graduation month, so the recruiters can find out quickly when you can start the role. In terms of putting down your GPA, you put it down if it's high, and if you think you're not that confident in your GPA, you can still leave it out and get away with it. The numbers here, which is like 7, 8, it's just like a rule of thumb, just like an estimate. So it's up to you if you want to put down your GPA or not. And also put it down in this format, as you can see in the fourth line, that 7.2/9.0, A minus average. And another handy tip is that you can put your best version of your GPA. So if you've done slightly better in your GNET paper, you can put down your engineering GPA, which doesn't include your GNET grade. And if you think you didn't do that well in your first year, you can put down your specialization GPA for the engineers here, because that doesn't include your first year. Next is experience. You put down your job title, your company, and the period you work for. And you put it down in a reverse chronological order. So simply the latest job you did on the top of the list. People usually put down around 2 or even 3 jobs that they've done in the past. And a recommended tip is use the Google Impact format to describe your experience. So as you can see, accomplished X as measured by Y by doing Z. So just digging in a little bit deeper in terms of how you write your descriptions for software-related experiences you did. Include the technologies, languages and libraries you use, and be specific so that you can show what sort of skills you used and what sort of skills you have learned from your experience. So for example, design a web application using, for example, React. Oh, and just one thing, for those who don't have any software experiences, you can still put down your part-time experiences, and they will also help. So next are projects. So you can talk about the projects you did with the reference to the technologies you use. So it's very similar to when you write your description for your job experiences. So for example, something like built a cross-platform using React Native mobile app to build workouts and track gym circuits over time. And if it's possible, talk about the impact of your project and include metrics, so specific values, like a mass user base of 200 plus people and generate a 2K profit. These sort of exact values are really clear, and recruiters like it. And in terms of the projects that you put down, anything you put here is a fair game in the interview. It will be a nice conversation starter. And also the interviewers will ask you questions based on your projects you wrote down in your CV. So for example, like, what have you gained from this project? What obstacles you faced? Things like that. For group projects, talk about your individual contribution. And in terms of, and small projects are just as good as big ones. So put down the projects that you're confident in your CV. Finally, if you don't have any personal project experiences, uni projects are still very good projects to put down. So put it down. Next, skills. It just needs to be a list. For example, as you can see, just like a list of Java, Python, JavaScript, C++. And a good tip here is many job descriptions, they explicitly mention what sort of skills they require for the position. So make sure you read those. And if you know any of the skills mentioned in the job description, put those down in your CV. But of course, don't put a language that you don't know. And it's also good to identify a language that you're comfortable interviewing in. As you would know, during the interviews, you will go through technical interviews where you code, and putting like your most confident language like Java and the first in the list can show the interviewer what language you prefer to do your interview in. And finally, this is just from my experience. I would say avoid using levels or meters. For example, rating your ability out of 10. Like 10 out of 10 in Java I don't think it doesn't mean too much. And of course, you won't really put the skills that you're like 5 out of 10 confident in. So it's just a tip from my experience. Next one is extracurriculars and awards. Anything related to leadership, sports, volunteering, achievements, they're all good. You can use it to show your personality and show that you didn't just study at the university, but you did some outside of uni, some social stuff. Of course, put your year of the achievement or the involvement period of your extracurricular activity. And again, don't be vague in your description. And similar to your job experiences and projects, try to include numbers and any metrics that makes it specific. For example, if you've done part 1 assistance for engineering, say you tutored around 500 students. It was just an estimate, but something like that. And finally, just some guidelines for summer tech CVs. As mentioned before, references. Summer tech CVs require references. And for me, I just put down the name of my referee and the organization they were in. And I found out that from year to year, the requirements changes a bit. So you might have to put down the referee's contact details. So make sure you read through the description and put down the necessary information they require from you. It also requires self-intro. So something like penultimate software engineering student, excited to work for your company. So that was a real bad one, but something like that is what is required for a summer tech CV. So yeah, take that into account. And my final tip is get your CV approved quick. Summer tech, in order to look at the list of jobs, the events they hold, you need an approved profile, and a process to get that done. You need to get your CV approved by summer tech. It opens around the start of the year. So make sure you submit your CV quick, get it checked out so you can get your profile approved quick, and yeah, start browsing the jobs and events and you don't miss out. So to wrap this up, I'll just quickly go over a CV exemplar and yeah, just recap the things we covered. So this is my current CV, and I'll just cover elements bit by bit. So as you can see, I put my name down. I make it explicit. I make it explicit which year of study I'm in. My contact details are here laid out, my email, my number, and links to my GitHub and LinkedIn. As you can see, I can click these. I can go straight into it, which is handy for the recruiters. And now how do I go back? Yeah, for education, your degree name, your GPAs, and I actually put down the course kind of names, descriptions, but instead of using course numbers, which don't mean anything to the employers, I use some keywords to show what kind of skills I gained from each courses. For skills, as you can see, my strongest language is Java, so I put that in the first in the list, and I just listed some sort of skills that I have. For work experiences, I yeah, as you can see, the job, the role, the company, the period I worked for. And let's go over like a bullet point that I wrote down. So optimize the user login, logout process, which involves registration and deregistration of subscriptions. Increase the process speed by 400% done in C++. So putting the specific values in, the technologies I used, it's a good thing, as I said before. And yeah, that's a good example of how to write bullet points for your job descriptions. And finally, the projects, very kind of similar to the work experience. I also included a link here to the repository for the project. So yeah, putting a link in is a good thing. And finally, my extracurriculars, more towards the bottom. And yeah, interests at the most bottom, because that's the least important. I guess my final tip, interests and like, extracurricular activities. I think it's good to put in because it's a good conversation starter with the employers. And I actually found a lot of interviewers kind of comment on these, like they ask, oh, I was in the choir as well. Or like, what was this interresidential talent quest is about? So some sort of those showing your character, your personality is something that's useful for your interviews. Sweet, so that was end of my part and I'll pass it on.
Wait, sweet. So next up, we're just going to talk briefly about the New Zealand application structure. So you've created a CV. Firstly, you want to start applying. So I'm just going over about applying for jobs, internships and graduate roles in New Zealand. It's a little bit different if you've applied overseas, such as Australia, where there's more of a focus on your technical skills. Most companies in New Zealand, their interview style is similar to if you've interviewed for roles in retail or hospitality. There's a big focus on your behavioral skills, your communication, and your ability to work with others. So some other places, the best places to start looking for roles that are available. First, we have Summer of Tech. So probably a lot of you have probably heard of Summer of Tech. We'll get into this in a bit more detail at the end. There's a section on that, but pretty much in a nutshell, it's a New Zealand only platform where employers can list their jobs, mainly summer internships. And there's a lot of great companies on there, such as our DEVS sponsor Xero. There's also PushPay, ANZ, and TradeMe. And then another option you can take is looking at job search websites such as Seek, Indeed, Student Job Search. Those are good places to keep an eye out, and you get more variety of jobs, whereas Summer Tech's a little bit, if you're not quite into developing, things like that. Also, another great way is word of mouth and emailing. So this is where you get to work your connections. As they say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So especially with smaller companies like startups, you can just sort of look through. In engineering, there's a database. Even if you don't do engineering, there's a database of companies where students have worked at before. Just hard emailing them and asking if there are any opportunities available can often land you an interview or even a role. Yeah, so if you're still working on your overall profile, even after Dave's fantastic CV tutorial, check out our DEVS Building Your Candidate Portfolio. There is a YouTube video on the DEVS channel. And it sort of goes over, again, CV specifics, how to use LinkedIn and make a LinkedIn profile if you want to use that, and also how to sort of build like a GitHub personal portfolio full of projects. Next up, after applying, you've put in your application. Obviously, that includes a cover letter as well. There are some great resources out there on that as well, which we haven't covered. But what do you do next? So you've got an interview secured. What next? So firstly, research the company and the interviewers. So on Summer of Tech, you can look through the profiles of the company and the recruiter as well. And then like stalking them on LinkedIn is a great way to research their companies and find out a little bit more about them. So you have sort of some background knowledge heading into the interview. It's also really good to look at the company website to look at their values, because These are something they really look for. If you are able to tie them and integrate them into your answers or your application, they really, really like that as well. Yep, so pretty much just when you're getting into the interview, make sure you know how to really get across your passion and commitment to the role. Again, because with a lot of companies, they understand that you are students, you're new, your experience is probably a bit limited. So really getting across your willingness to learn is a big thing. Your ability to communicate with others, and pretty much something to prove that you're passionate, not just beyond just, oh, I study software. That's often not quite enough.
Okay, so the next thing you want to do is clarify what you're getting into. Once you know that you're getting an interview, you want to know, first of all, how many interviews you have to go through, and also what those interviews look like. So you want to identify if there is a technical or coding section, and if there is, find out what that looks like. Is it just a take-home test in HackerRank, or is it even a live technical interview? Just make sure you know what to expect so that you can prepare for it accordingly. And on that note, as Julia said, New Zealand companies are very focused on the more behavioral side. So technical interviews and questions are probably usually more around the easy, medium lead code questions. So yeah, just make sure to prepare for those. And of course, each company will have a slightly different process. And yeah, you just have to kind of adapt. And then of course, you can ask around, utilize your network to maybe people who have already worked there or who have interviewed there will let you know what kind of questions to expect and maybe some tips and tricks. So here are some common questions that they'll ask you during the interview. And you can start asking yourself these questions and maybe writing a script for them. And while it isn't good to rote memorize them, it is good to know them off by heart, but you don't want to sound like a robot. You want to make sure that you memorize it to the point that it sounds natural. And also it helps convey that you are sort of being yourself and you're being genuine. So make sure you maybe practice with your friends, give each other feedback, or even go to some mock interview workshops that are hosted by the University of Auckland. Summer of Tech has some, and even the tech clubs have some. So that's all for before the interview. I will now be going for after the interview. So the actual interview starts before they ask the questions. It starts when you hop onto their premises, if it's in person. So make sure you dress appropriately, and this applies to both in-person and virtual interviews. Be nice to absolutely everyone, because basically everyone at their company is an interviewer of some sort. And firmly shake their hand, make eye contact, and do the usual things, make sure your background is tidy and whatnot. And hopefully you've made a great impression from just arriving. Now for the actual interview. And I think this can be divided into two parts, which is like common questions or expected questions and unexpected questions. And I mentioned some of those questions, the common questions beforehand, and now I get to delve deeper into some of those. Like I said, we don't want to over-prepare, but having a script ready and practicing with that script can really help you just be more confident with your answer. So I think these are some of the best questions to prepare for, because they're probably going to ask you like similar questions, but yeah. I'm going to be talking about tell me about yourself, that question, because I think it's a very important question to prepare for. It's highly likely to be the first question they'll ask. So it's very important that you start off strong so that you make a good first impression, and also so that you feel confident that at least you have this question in the bag. And I like to recommend this structure, which is an introduction, your name, education, what past, what led you up to this point, like why are you studying your degree, present, what are you doing now, and then future, what do you hope to do, and maybe how does this role align with your goals? And I'll be going over an example of that later in the demo. You don't want this to be too long, so maybe keep it around 1 to 2 minutes, and even 2 minutes is pushing it. And so for the other questions I showed, you really want to utilize your knowledge, both about yourself and the company. Hopefully you've scanned through their company website and you've seen their values, and you really want to memorize them. and so that you can incorporate them into your answers. So once you think about the company and also yourself, you can actually sort of see how their values align with yours, and it really makes a sort of genuine answer of why you want to work for them. For example, that question, why do you want to work at this company? You don't want to say it's because you really need the internship. You say it's because you've looked into the company and you really admire how they value excellence, just like you do in your everyday life. And for example, for the question, why did you study this degree? You don't want to say it's because of the great salary and perks, which it might be, but don't say that. You say you enjoy the challenges that maybe you faced throughout your degree and how you've grown as a developer. Also, the opportunity to collaborate with other talented people have inspired you to continue pursuing this industry. So yeah, when you incorporate their values into your answers, not only do you show that you've prepared for this interview, you also show how you fit into the culture of the company, which New Zealand companies are all about. When they look at candidates, they don't just look at how well you can code, they look at how well you fit within their teams, because people want to work with someone who's easy to work with, if that makes sense. And of course, preparing answers to questions is good, but not if you don't do it well. So practice is perfect. And after all that practice, what if they do ask you some really unexpected questions, like, tell me about your greatest achievement, or describe a time you had to overcome a conflict within a team setting? I'm about to introduce to you the STAR format, your best friend for all your behavioral questions. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. If you format your answers like this, you will end up answering the question with enough detail and hopefully wow your recruiters. We want to use STAR because instead of saying, yes, I can work in a team, you show that you actually have had experience of working in teams and you have the evidence. So getting into it, S for situation. Before you actually dive into your answer, we want to set the scene for the recruiter. You want to have enough information for them to understand the rest of your answer, but we also want this to be concise because we don't want background information to be the main part of your answer. Next, task. We actually want to let the recruiter know what your goal was in the situation. What was your role and what were you planning to do? What were you hoping to achieve? Which is not to be confused with the next step, action. The distinct difference between task and action is that task is what you were going to do or were expected to do, while action is what you actually did. This is maybe the highlight of your answer because you talk about what you did in the situation that you have described and how you might have achieved the task that you set out in the previous step. Notice how the focus is on you. Don't focus on what your team did, although it might be nice to mention, but focus on your individual responsibility during this event because you're the one in the interview, not your team. You also want to show how your involvement impacts the situation. And lastly, result. Here, describe how your actions have impacted the situation you described. Did you complete the task that you were supposed to do? And if you did accomplish something, how did you know you accomplished it? How was it measured? You can use something similar like the XYZ format that Dave mentioned in his section. And of course, it doesn't have to be an achievement. The result can be negative, but make sure you paint it in a positive light. For example, even though your team may not have completed a task, you still gained because of the lessons you learned, and maybe you know now how to move forward if you were in that situation ever again. And now you might be thinking, wow, that's a lot to think about during an interview. And you're right, it's kind of a lot to think about the whole situation, task, and whatever. But here's a way to help yourself kind of move that thinking before the actual interview. Here's a behavioral interview matrix. So first, you think about 3 projects or experiences, which can be from uni projects, work experience, or even volunteering, literally anything. And it's best to have a variety of experiences so that you can have like a variety of responses. Next, you think about the challenges, mistakes, what you enjoyed and whatnot. So maybe, for example, an experience is you did a hackathon and you think maybe about a challenge. So perhaps in that hackathon, you didn't feel confident with your programming skills at that stage. And what did you enjoy? Maybe you really liked struggling with people in those 24 hours and creating something from scratch. This way, as I've said, you can do all the thinking about what to talk about before the interview. And then during the interview, you kind of just have to envision this matrix in your head and then just pick up the appropriate one when they ask you a question. And remember, in your answers, always try to be positive, regardless of how badly the situation went or how badly your team performed and whatnot. In your answer, there should be no such thing as negative experiences, only learning opportunities. Complaining about other people and just the situation overall can leave a very bad impression on the interviewer. You don't want to blame others, even if it might have been their fault, or if you think it is their fault. It is a lot more impressive to the recruiter if you show how, despite all the adversity you've faced, you've managed to find a solution or learn a very important lesson, which has helped you grow as a person. So now you've reached the end of the interview. You've answered all of their questions, and except one. And they ask, do you have any questions for me? The only correct answer is yes. You do have questions for them, which again, you should have prepared beforehand. After all that self-reflection and company research, you might have some questions in mind already. And if not, here are examples of questions to ask. Regardless, it's really important that you ask questions at the end because it indicates to them that you are genuinely interested in the role and the company, and then it shows that you want to learn more about them. And of course, you want to thank them for their time and use their name if you did remember it. And yeah, now we'll be doing a demo, and I will ask Julia to come up. We're going to be doing 2 situations, and I'll let you decide which one's bad and which one's good. So I'll ask you the questions. Hello.
Hi, Jess.
Thank you so much for coming to this interview. Could you please tell me about yourself?
Yep. So, kia ora, I'm Julia. I'm in my 3rd year of software engineering. Yeah, I got into it because I was like, oh, I like coding. Last year at the end of my 2nd year, I was like really, really burnt out. So I didn't really want to find any internships or anything. But then I realized, I really need to get my hours to complete engineering. And I found your company and I thought it looked kind of cool. So here I am.
Nice. That's so thank you again for taking the time to come here. And it's nice to learn more about yourself. Could you please tell me about a time you encountered a challenge in a group setting?
Yep. I had a group project in engineering at uni. It wasn't that hard of a project, but I was with some team members and they didn't really pull their weight and they were really slacking off, and it just ended up being me doing all the work. And I found that was really unfair that they would receive the same grade for the work that only I had done. So I talked to the lecturer, let them know what happened, and then they managed to just give me the good grade. And I think what I learned was that I think I just work better alone.
Nice. It's good that you've realized that. That's actually all the questions I have right now. Do you have any questions for me?
Oh yeah, what's the salary?
And scene. So that's one situation. Now, Julia. Here.
Hi, Jess. Thank you for coming to interview today. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Okay, so we'll just jump right into it. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so as you know, my name is Jess. I'm studying my 3rd year of software engineering, and I actually didn't expect to be here. But after everything, I really enjoyed the challenges I face, and being able to work with talented people in this this degree has really inspired me to continue learning more about it. And now that I feel like I have enough of a foundation in programming through all the courses and the projects I've done throughout my degree, I think I've realized that I really enjoy learning more about how technology is used to solve different problems for different people, which is why I'm so excited to be here today, talking to you about your company and how you solve their problems.
That's really awesome. Yeah, love hearing that. So could you tell me about a situation where you might have encountered conflict within a team? Tell me about how you navigated that and what was the result?
Yes, so last year I actually worked in a team of 6. I led a team of 6 in one of my engineering courses. And at the beginning of the semester, we set out these goals and just made sure I was in charge of delegating tasks to the different members. And as halfway through the semester, I noticed one of them wasn't completing their tasks in time. And it was really unfair because someone would usually have to complete their work for them. So I actually talked to that person one-on-one, asked them why, maybe what was wrong, was there anything I could do to help, and in general, or with the task. And they actually communicated to me that they felt uncomfortable to complete the task. So I offered to help them, and I offered to ask the team to make him ask the team to see if there's anything everyone else can do. And then told him in the future, if you feel uncomfortable, make sure if you could communicate those requests to me, then I would be more than happy to try and accommodate them. And at the end of the semester, we got an A+, which I was really happy about.
That's awesome. Really glad to hear about how that work paid off. So that's it for me. Any questions from you?
Yes, so you actually asked me about the challenges that I faced in my time at university. I was wondering if you've seen any challenges you've seen interns maybe faced in their internship program, and what attributes successful candidates have to help them overcome these challenges. Seen. Which one was better, guys?
Me or Jess? Nice.
Okay, maybe it wasn't me. It was Jess, which is me. Hopefully the second one was better.
Hopefully you'll be able to see obviously what I did wrong. Firstly, introducing myself. I didn't really say anything other than that, oh, software's hard. Oh, I want a job. Don't do that. And with the group situation, all I did was bash talk my teammates. Don't do that. I didn't use the STAR method either. So that's what Jess did well.
Yes.
Is that it for your section?
Yes, that is it for my section. So yeah, you finish your interview, shake their hand, walk away and relax. And if you take anything away from this section, it's to be positive in everything you do and say. Treat it as a conversation between you and the interviewer, because remember, they're human. And also practice makes perfect. So now I'll hand it back over to Julia to do the rest of the interview. Well, after the interview.
Yep. Yeah, got it. Yep. So the interview is done and dusted. It's not over yet though. What do you do afterwards? Firstly, self-reflect. Take some time to think about what went well, what didn't go well, specifically on areas that you need to improve on and how you can improve on those, what you can do to improve. As Jess and Dave mentioned before, CDES, I think engineering faculty, summer tech, and also SESA run mock interviews, and they sort of start soon. So definitely register for those as keep in mind that a practice makes perfect. Even if this interview didn't go well, just take it in as experience and learning. And then and then after the interview as well, you can email the interviewer or recruiter thanking them for their time. Employers really love this, and it shows that you're really appreciative and grateful, and might show that you're really polite. You can also ask them for feedback as well. Sometimes they might not have time, or due to obviously the number of applicants, this might not always be possible, but if you can, always ask for feedback. And also if you have any follow-up questions, it's okay to email them as well. Don't always expect a reply back, as some companies sort of like to ghost you a little bit, but remember not to constantly badger them. And during your interview, they will usually let you know at the end how long you should expect to wait before hearing back from them. So if they say a week, remember that's 7 or 5 business days, so Monday to Friday. So if your interview is on a Friday, don't expect to hear back for a while. And even if they say a week and it's already been a week and you haven't heard back from them, give them a bit of buffer time to really get back to you. If it's been like 2-3 weeks, then feel free to send an email reaching out, being like, just getting a status update on your application. Again, if you don't get the offer, that's okay. Doesn't mean you're not a great developer. You could have just had an off day. You might have just not been the right fit for the company, but remember to keep trying. That's the important part. Also, take some time to rest and prepare for your next interview. Interviews can be really stressful, and they can burn you out quite easily. So, take care of yourself, play some games, go to the gym, invest in crypto. Treat yourself. Yep. And again, lastly, keep trying, keep applying, apply to anything and everything you possibly can. It's all just experience. Even if you go into an interview being like, oh, I don't really want this role, don't think like that. Just treat it as if you really do. If you get it, you can always reject it. Okay, now we're going into a deep dive on summer of tech. So firstly, what is Summer of Tech? So as mentioned before, it's a New Zealand program that helps students get paid summer internships and also graduate roles more recently. Some companies exclusively recruit interns through Summer Tech, such as Xero, and there are some really great companies on there. So it's a really great place to get started. And with the case of New Zealand and Summer Tech specifically, most of the companies are, again, not too concerned with skills. They're really looking for, again, strong communication, willingness to learn, and passion and enthusiasm. And on top of that, how you can show your enthusiasm and passion. So firstly, what you do first, you need to register on the website and getting your profile approved. So as Dave and Jess mentioned, the Summer Tech CV is quite specific, but they have a portfolio pack and a guide to help you make your CV. And even if your profile doesn't get approved, it doesn't mean it won't get approved later. You can make edits to it, and then you can talk to one of the Summer Tech staff to see where you can approve. And then on the website, you can apply for roles up until, I think, pretty much offers day essentially, or interviews time. And then what they also offer is different boot camps as well. So those are also really good to attend. And then afterwards is meet and greet. So this is sort of the start of the formal interviewing process. And then there are speed interviews, and then it all culminates into offers day, which is right at the end. So firstly, getting your profile approved. Again, you need to make a CV, very specific. It often, from what I've seen, I think it can go up to like 3 or 4 pages this year because it's really weird. But keep in mind, this is a very specific CV for just Summer Tech. So definitely keep another 1 or 2 page minimal CV for all your other applications that aren't on Summer Tech. You also need to submit your academic transcripts. Again, most companies don't really care too much about your grades. They're more looking about what courses you've done and what sort of skills that you've learned. And there's also a little profile section. So short blurb about you, ambitions, why did you choose this career? A couple of paragraphs really showing your enthusiasm and interest is pretty much enough. There's also a skills and interest section listing a bunch of skills and that you can tick. So you can either select that you're interested, you have academic experience, you have practical experience, or paid experience. If you don't feel like you have a lot of academic or practical experience, just tick anything that you're interested in and put interested to sort of buffer up your list. Next up, applying for roles. So you look for roles through the job search tab, which isn't this one, but it will come up with all the different roles that are available. You can refine your search through keywords. If you're specifically looking at backend, you can look at those. You can also filter by location. So Summer Tech offers internships in Auckland and Wellington mostly, but they have them regionally throughout everywhere, like Hamilton, Gisborne, I think, also has one. And so with the jobs that they have offered, you can either like or apply. So employers can only see if you've applied for a job. If you add it to the like list, they can't see. And it's important to note that you can only apply for up to 15 roles. You can always change these at any point, but Summer Tech likes to limit this. So make sure you know what ones you're really keen on and make those your priority. Next up, boot camps. So these are free events that Summer Tech runs, sometimes in partnerships with other companies such as Google, Pushpay here. These are marked on your profile. Again, these are not compulsory, but because they are marked on your profile, these are a great way to show your interest and passion in certain things if your personal projects are looking a little slim. And sometimes this can actually help push you over the edge with other candidates. I think I had a friend who flat out got rejected because they hadn't attended any boot camps. Again, this is not pressure saying you have to, but if you feel like you need something else to boost your portfolio, this is a great way. There's a range of different workshops as well. So they have mock interviews, a bunch of those coming up. Some cool ones like security with Aura, great one. And then next up, so the start of the actual sort of process about getting hired. So meet and greet. So some tips for meet and greet. The first one is go to meet and greet. That's it, pretty much. Well, and also do well. Most employers don't even consider applicants that they don't meet at meet and greet because all they have is your CV. Unless it's the best CV they've ever seen, they won't consider you. Meet and greet is the best way to sort of sell yourself. And it's also a great way to find out more about the role you've applied for. This year, I believe meet and greet There's going to be 2 meet and greets, one in Auckland and one held in Wellington. These will be in person this year, and there's also an online one. So you have options if you say can't make the dates of the in-person ones. And some tips as well, make sure you do some research beforehand and prioritize your top companies. So time during the meet and greets can be quite limited, and there's a lot of companies and a lot of people and other students floating around. Make sure after this, hopefully you've already applied for your top 15, make a list of, which one's my top option. Say, I really want to go see Xero and ANZ, go see them first. And then afterwards, it's also really good to talk to everyone else and people you haven't even considered applying for, because you never know, they might take an interest in you or you might take an interest in them. And then next up, after the meet and greet, if the company is interested, they will invite you to a speed interview. And when they say speed interviews, they mean it. They're only 10 minutes long. So essentially, it's pretty much a chance to expand on meet and greet. Some interviews are really casual. I think one interview I had was, I got into the interview room and then the Zoom call, and then the interviewer had a bird sitting on his shoulder. So we just talked about that for 10 minutes. Very, very casual. And there's some are quite formal. You get in there, they start like loading you with questions, 10 minutes. So be prepared for both, and obviously do research beforehand. I think the best way to do this is get like a cheat sheet up of all the roles that you have interviews for, list your the recruiter who might be interviewing you, the values, etc., common questions, descriptions about the role, and some questions that you might want to ask the employer as well. So after speed interviews, which are sort of through the Summer Tech platform, some companies might conduct further interviews or technical assessments. That will be up to them. They will contact you directly to invite you to maybe an hour-long in-person interview, or they might send you a hacker rank or something. That's up to them. Otherwise, for companies, a lot of the companies who don't do further interviews, you will just have to wait for your offer. So all offers are released on the same day around, I think, 10 a.m. However, most companies will let you know beforehand if you're expecting a role or not. So they'll give you a call or email you to let you know that you're expecting an offer. And don't be discouraged if you don't get an offer straight away at 10. Still keep checking, because as the offers are loaded and people start rejecting or accepting them, you might be second or third on the list, and you might be able to get in from there. If you're feeling really confident going into offers day, and you're trying to decide between multiple offers as well, Summer Tech have career advisors that can help you narrow down your options. Again, this is before offers day, it's kind of before you know which offers you have, but if you are feeling really confident, that's something you can do. And so last year, there were over 400 summer internship placements, and there's a lot of opportunities available, not just in developing. There's QA roles, UX UI designer roles, DevOps, business and insights analysts, and also security roles. So a lot of different things on there. And more roles, if you apply right now, which I suggest you do, there aren't that many roles right now, but they will mostly be all posted by the time we get to September, which is meet and greet. And here are some of the sponsors. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is some of Tech sponsors. So a lot of these companies will be recruiting through Summer of Tech. So that's it from me and Dave and Jess. Does anyone have any questions? Have you checked the Menti?
Yes. Okay. Oh, I have to be logged in.
Did anyone submit anything on the Menti?
Nope.
No questions? Okay.
Everyone knows everything.
Okay. Sweet. UA?
Oh wait,
No?
we have things to say.
Oh, we doing this?
Yes.
Okay, you can do
Oh,
this.
are we doing this?
UA. UA is, okay. Well, give a warm welcome to DEVS co-president UA Shen.
Hi, so we're currently running a DEVS for charity, and we're partnering up with She Sharp, which is a charity that supports women in tech. And there are two ways that you can donate to them. So one through LeetCode. When you complete a LeetCode challenge, DEVS will donate $1 to She Sharp. One entry per person, you can do any problem you want. So you can literally go online, search up TwoSum, do it in like 10 seconds, and then that's $1 to women in tech. Secondly, you can buy DEVS hoodies. $4 per hoodie is going to She Sharp. So those will come after mid-sem break. And yeah, here are the 2 QR codes. With the what? Okay, so since we've got a bit of time before pizza food comes, you guys can do some leak coding. So these are QR codes to the form. So if you want to scan them to access the form, pull up a leak code question, you can screenshot it and put it into the form.
Hello, SESA have a CV checking event in 2 weeks' time on Tuesday. It's open to everyone. We will have industry sponsors and grads coming in. So if you feel inspired to update your CV, come to the event. You should be able to scan that QR code to get your CV checked and get some tips and tricks to make it better. Yeah, thanks.